One person who has been very much involved in covering this is Jacqueline Charles. She's the Caribbean correspondent for the Miami Herald and, like yours truly, a former NABJ Journalist of the Year. All right, Jacqueline, always glad to have you. So give us a perspective. We've sort of heard conflicting things coming from the Haitian government. You've had the Haitian envoy to the United States who resigned, claiming that the United States is supporting a propped up government as opposed to one chosen by the people. Give us the latest in terms of what's happening. Do they want to see these deportations stopped? What's really going on with the Haitian government?
Okay, well, first of all, let's make sure we understand that Daniel Foote is not a member of the Haitian government.
Right. I said the U.S. envoy. Yeah.
He was appointed by President Joe Biden about 2 weeks after Jovenel Moïse was assassinated. That's the president of Haiti. He was shockingly assassinated in the middle of the night on July 7th in his private residence in his bedroom. And so, you know, congressional lawmakers have been asking, even before this, they had been asking for a special envoy because they had issues with the U.S. policy toward Haiti. And so Daniel Foote was appointed, and he resigned yesterday, basically calling the U.S.'s treatment of Haitian migrants along the border inhumane. He raised a number of issues, and his concern as well was in terms of the U.S. government's support for the interim prime minister, the interim government that's there. The situation with Haiti is this. The president was murdered. The president of the Supreme Court died weeks earlier from COVID-19. There is no lower chamber in Parliament, and the Senate, which should have 30 members, only have 10 members. And there are no elected officials, local elected officials in the country.
So who the hell is in control?
Exactly. So Jovenel Moïse was ruling by decree. He was one of 11 elected officials in a country of 11.5 million people. So if you recall, there was a power struggle after his death where the acting prime minister, the foreign minister, was holding on, and Ariel Henry, who had been appointed by Jovenel Moïse prior, just days before his death, to lead a new consensus government, was saying, but wait a minute, the president picked me. And so you've got this very murky situation. At the same time, you have civil society, human rights groups, business groups who are saying, listen, we are tired of the same old, same old. We want a game changer. And we have signed this accord where we say we want to take charge of this country. And instead of going to elections right away, because we've got a gang problem, we've got all these other issues, we want to put in place a transition government for 3 years so that we can clean some things up and then we can get people to elections. So all of that, in the midst of all of that, let's not forget there was an earthquake on the 14th of August, a deadly and powerful 7.2 earthquake. 800,000 people are affected. The same week that Del Rio was happening, UN agency said we cannot get humanitarian assistance to 400,000 people because the road outside of Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti, is controlled by gangs. So you've got this humanitarian crisis brewing, and then you have Del Rio.
Whew, that's a whole lot.
Yes.
That letter that Daniel submitted, he just blasted the U.S. policy and the treatment of the Haitian migrants, but also said, look, the policy overall is seriously flawed. So earlier, I've heard different stuff, which is why we wanted to have the Haitian ambassador to the United States on. Are Haitian leaders, whoever they are they saying halt the deportations? Sure, bring them here. What's the official position, if there is one, of the Haitian government?
So last Sunday, I was in Del Rio, Texas, and I spoke to the head of the Office of National Migration. He is the person responsible in the government for receiving these migrants. I mean, and he pleaded. He says, look, 14,000 migrants, because that's how much the United States warned them to be prepared for. He says, we cannot take this. And he asked for, quote unquote, a moratorium, a humanitarian moratorium on these migrants. The reality is this, is that, you know, government after government in Haiti, they are not going to reject the return of a Haitian national. Once you are a Haitian national, you are a Haitian national. And the reality of deportations or repatriations, as the U.S. calls them, is that the receiving country doesn't really get a chance to say no. We saw this last year with Guatemala in the COVID pandemic when the Guatemalan government was saying, listen, you're sending people to us who are positive for COVID. We are not going to accept them. And the U.S. pushed and pushed, and guess what? Today, Guatemala is receiving deportation flights. So this is the issue. So today, Secretary Mayorkas said that $5 million plus has been given to USAID to assist with the repatriation of individuals. There have already been 22 flights. Over 2,000 people have been sent back. Has that money arrived in Haiti? Is it going to arrive in time to assist these people? All of that is unclear. The reality is that you have a country in turmoil. You named a crisis. It exists. Today I was told there are at least a half dozen people who were kidnapped. Those are the cases that we know about. You've got gang violence. You have a humanitarian crisis with the earthquake and even outside of the earthquake. And you have people who left Haiti after the 2010 earthquake. Why? Because the promise that the United States gave, which was to build back better, this country, it did not materialize. So they left. They went to Brazil. They went to Chile. And after things started to turn there, especially with COVID and the economy, what did they do? They picked up their kids. They picked up their life belongings in backpacks, and they made a 7,000-mile trek through the jungles of South America. Many people who did that did not survive. They were killed. They died. It's a very dangerous terrain. And eventually they made it to Mexico. I was on the border. I was in Mexico. I was in Del Rio. I spoke to the migrants. They tell me that it was word of mouth. People said, hey, Del Rio is open, and they went to the border. And even after they arrive in Haiti, they are still having a hard time to understand what exactly happened. How did I get back here? But I thought the border was open, and the border is not open.
So here you have the United States deporting folks back and deporting them back to what? I mean, that is just, what you are describing is utter chaos, sheer madness, sort of like who's on first, who the hell's in charge. And so I could only imagine getting deported back and you get dropped off and it's like, what the hell is going on?
You have a government and, you have a government that is in charge, but it's not a government that is, that's been elected. And it's not a government that has cash. This is a cash-strapped country trying to figure out how do we create this road to get to elections so that you have an elected government so that you can hold people accountable. But what Haiti and even Daniel Foot was saying is that the conditions in Haiti are just not there to hold elections. There's a serious problem with insecurity, with armed gangs. How, if you are running for office, where do you go to campaign? How do you campaign in an area that's controlled by gangs? So this is the reality that you have. And now what has happened in terms of the U.S. response with the special envoy and what is happening, you look at the current, government that's there and you're saying, but wait a minute, they're being attacked from the left, they're being attacked from the right, And honestly, if this thing all falls apart, I'm not exactly sure what tomorrow will look like. So it's a very delicate situation in Haiti right now. And to be sending these people back, what advocates are saying is that it's not the proper thing to do. It's going to add more strain. And, despite the fact that the U.S. said to us repeatedly that they were going to make efforts to see if Chile and Brazil can accept some of these people who are willing to return, because some of them have legal residency in those countries. As journalists, we have not seen any evidence of that. So far, it looks like everybody has been returned back to Haiti.
So you were in Del Rio. Where are you now? Are you in the States? Are you there? Are you in Haiti? Are you somewhere else?
Oh, my God. I was a month in Haiti, 3 weeks in Haiti, and then I was in Del Rio. I'm back in Miami. One of the first, and I also went to Acuña, Ciudad Acuña in Mexico on the Mexican side, where I talked to migrants who had left the camp because they started to receive word of the deportations. But one of the frustrations for journalists in Del Rio before they emptied this camp is we were not allowed access. We were not allowed in, so we couldn't go in. We couldn't really see what the conditions were. We couldn't talk to the people. So whatever information we were getting outside of the few drone footage footages or videos that people were sending out, and it made its way on Haitian social media platforms, we were basically just taking authority words. And if you recall, there's been a lot of discussions and debate about the conditions under which, people were subjected to in those camps, in that camp.
I don't even know what to even ask next. What is next?
It's desperation. I mean, it's desperation. Secretary Mayorkas is right in terms of, people being misled and believing that there was temporary protective status here. The Biden administration is in a difficult position. On the one hand, they're trying to get, comprehensive humanitarian reform in, but then on the other hand, you have this rush to the border. And of course, we have that photo. We have the images. I saw somebody put the video today, and, when I looked at that video, I was just, my mouth dropped open. And let me say this, for African Americans, that picture took us back to the slave patrols. But for Haitians, it was a much more recent. It was a reminder of the double standard that has existed in U.S. immigration policy toward Haitian migrants, where Haitian migrants are often considered economic migrants, regardless of what's happening in their homes, that, there were 60,000 of them in Guantanamo Bay, when we had a policy called wet foot, dry foot, so that when Cubans came to the U.S. and they touched soil, 1 year and 1 day, they were allowed to apply for residency. But Haitians and other migrants who were caught at sea were returned to their countries of origin. And so that is where it hit them. And there was a line that I had in my story when I said, it doesn't matter if it was ropes or if it rains, whether that migrant was struck. I mean, as cliche as it sounds, a picture speaks 1,000 words. And that is how the community, the Haitian community, received that. That is how they view that photo and the video of that Border Patrol officer and that Haitian migrant.
Well, I'm glad you were there to break it down for us, Jacqueline. It is a whole lot to take in. And again, I mean, as you say, stuck between a rock and a hard place. But the first thing is the Biden administration stopped the mistreatment. Look, there's a way to actually handle the processing of people. And so we certainly see what happens next. And my God, hopefully the Haitians can just get a break. Because, as you said, president been assassinated. Frankly, the way it reads like an inside job. Earthquake as well. Now this is just one thing. And of course, dealing with the hurricane, it's just one thing after another that keeps just hitting the country of Haiti.
Yeah, thank you, Roland.
Jacqueline, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Great job.
Thank you.
Back to that Roland Martin unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?